But let's go to the 76ers for a second. Joel Embiid is one of like the most talented players we maybe have ever seen, right? He's like a bigger, stronger Hakeem Olajuwon, right? Or like a more athletic Shaq, maybe. Like he's or maybe a more tactically skilled Shaq. Like he's unbelievably talented, but he seems to be having a hard time staying healthy. Probably is the big knock on him. But there's one thing that has struck me as slightly different than just like staying healthy, like as opposed to injury, is illness. And so there was a lot of talk around the last couple of games where he's been sick. He's had the stomach flu. He's had this. He's had that. And I was watching the analyst talk last night about how he looked very sick when he was walking into the arena and the impact that had on their team. And that struck me very much from two different places, Raymond, that I want you to kind of give us your thoughts on. One was just mindset training wise, body language, right? How your body is feeding your energy. And as a leader of the team, the impact that's having on your team's performance. By the way, his team got absolutely throttled. But the second was similarly with my background as a wrestling coach that we've talked about in previous podcasts and the role that weight cutting and weight management plays in the sport of wrestling. One of the things that I have seen firsthand that I don't need to focus on the sports psychology research on, that I've got enough experience with over 25 years in the sport of wrestling, is watching how people who are cutting weight and ultimately physically feeling badly because of it, how the energy that they have is directly tied to the way they hold themselves, meaning their body language. So I was kind of thinking about those two concepts, impact on your team's energy, impact on yourself's energy, and the role it plays when you're physically feeling ill, not necessarily injured, but like you just don't feel as great. I don't know. What role do you think that plays? Do you think like Embiid needs to kind of step it up a notch and manage his body language better? Or do you think I'm being sort of unfair to him?
Well, I don't know if it's unfair. Let's just start by saying when we feel better physically, it most certainly impacts our mental state positively. Okay, so people who have chronic pain or are ill, or let's just say you just don't feel good, maybe you're just too cold or too hot, it's going to have an impact on your mental state. Being physically comfortable, feeling like you have physical energy certainly helps. There's no doubt about that. So what we want to say is it's understandable why somebody like Joel Embiid, who's been feeling ill it's been a while now, right? Like a couple weeks that this dude's
10
been
days.
It's been a while.
And he's probably really sick.
Okay, so that's going to take a real toll on your body. It's going to take a toll on your mental state because it's exhausting and it just feels uncomfortable for an extended period of time. And when you're a professional athlete like Joel Embiid is, and you're demanding your body to perform, and it's not just like their only performance is game time. Like the dude's got to go to practice. He's got to do shoot around. He's got to do treatment. I mean, he's battling a couple of physical injuries at the moment. Bottom line is he's trying to demand an awful lot of his body. And when it feels crappy for that long, it's going to take a physical toll and it's going to take a mental toll. And it's going to be harder to kind of get that energy, even to do the little things like manage your body language or to communicate directly with teammates and do all those things. Like it's much harder to do that when you don't feel like you have the energy to do so. On the other side of that coin is we often make ourselves feel worse than we really do, or we certainly have the ability to, based on what we tell ourselves and what we allow our body to do. So I'm certainly not saying that, if you just change your body language, you will feel better, like your illness will go away. But what we do know from a lot of research related to illness is that the vast majority of illness is self-induced. Now, I imagine that if Joel Embiid has been feeling sick for 10 days, it's not self-induced. Like the dude is sick. Right. However, the degree to which he's feeling crappy and the degree that impacts his teammates can be largely in part due to what his body language looks like coming into the arena or in the locker room and the things he's saying. Like if he's constantly complaining about how crappy he feels, that's something that's contagious. Poor body language and a poor attitude are contagious to the people around you. And so if that's the case, it could most certainly be something that could be negatively impacting his teammates. But let's also not overlook the fact that if he's been feeling that bad and battling those, like physically, he's pretty wrecked right now, which has kind of been the MO for big men for the last 20 years in the NBA by the time we get to the playoffs. It's really difficult to just control your body language because you've been feeling crappy for so long. So, that's kind of a long way of answering your question to say, like, it's totally understandable why he would be walking that way and talking that way, given what he's been feeling physically. But does it have an impact on the people around him? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think you also said something towards the end there that was really important of that he's talking about it, right? If he's talking to his teammates about it and the impact that it's having. I mean, one of the adages in sports, and most of the old adages in sports, I think you and I kind of think are stupid, but because a lot of research proves them wrong. Yeah. But one of them that I actually do buy into is that, like, the Tom Brady's and the Derek Jeters of the world have always subscribed to, and it's always very obvious the value I think that it brings is that you don't talk about it, when you're injured or when you're not feeling well, because of the impact that it has not only on yourself but on your team. I mean, we've talked about this on previous podcasts. I'm a big New York fan. You're a big Boston fan. So, like, as a huge Derek Jeter fan, one of the things that I always loved about him was you knew he was hurt all the time. You can't go through a long professional sport season, get to the end as the way the Yankees often did in the postseason. Like, you're going to be banged up, right? You're going to be hurt to a certain extent, but you never ever heard Jeter give any answer other than like, "Oh no, I'm fine. No, I'll be fine tomorrow." It was like there was never any interview that talked about an injury or an illness. It just never happened because he just wouldn't allow himself to talk about it. And I think, Brady in the Boston market, it's kind of the same way. Like, you can't be in your 40s playing football and not feel terrible.
Avocado milkshakes, dude.
Right. But, like, you never hear those guys talk about it. And so, like, I don't know Joel Embiid. I don't know anyone of the 76ers. I don't work with them at all. But I do, from a mindset training standpoint, wish somebody would be like, "Listen, dude, I know you feel terrible. Stop talking about it. I think it's having a negative effect on you and the team." Sounds like you agree?
Yeah, to a degree. I would say I would want, if I was Joel Embiid, if I was working with him, which I'm not, I would say, what are the times and who are the people you can talk about it with that aren't going to negative, right? So just like, hey, I'm feeling injured or I'm feeling sick, just don't talk about it, period. Probably not healthy because you're not giving people the space to express what they feel, right? But if we're saying, hey, when you're with the training staff or when you're at home or you're talking with your doctors or your friends, or if you have a couple of teammates where that away from the arena or away from practice, you can be like, "Yo, dude, I'm feeling awful today." And they're the veterans who get what that means and aren't going to take it out of that space. That's one thing. But if you're bringing it into a locker room where you're just allowing it to kind of permeate through the group, and it becomes a thing where it becomes okay to let discomfort and, more accurately, like, your current state be more important than what the team is doing or more important than getting prepared, then ultimately it can be something that can get in the way of not only your personal mindset, but also the team's approach and the team mindset as well. So, like I said, I wouldn't say a no talk about it policy is very healthy. I think that can, and I know what you're saying. You're not saying like people should just never talk about injuries, because that's obviously incredibly dangerous. And that's how, like, we had the concussion epidemic in the NFL. But the right time and the right place is often really important with that, Yeah. And when you do talk, and when you are talking about it, it's a productive conversation. It's not a, let me just complain about it for an extended period of time.
Yeah. And let me just clarify that, because you're 100% right. Of course, I agree with you. It's not like a macho, hey, never talk about it, to concussions to the point you're making. That's of course not what I'm saying. You need to be empowered to talk to your training staff. I mean, people need to know, of course, he's really sick. And, like, the message isn't to pile on Joel Embiid, by the way, who I think is like a hilarious personality. And I love that he
does bring a real life to a press conference, doesn't he?
I just think it's like a valuable lesson for athletes and people out there and you're right. It's dangerous to say it the way I said it with a little bit more context. Like, it's not that you never talk about it. When you're not feeling well, you have to talk to health professionals. You have to, release what you have to release emotionally to feel your best. Like, that's all very, very positive. Your point is 100% dead on. Do those things productively. Do them in a way that's helpful to your health. Yeah. My point is more about the performance of yourself and your team. Don't be that person that's talking about it so much. And when I think Joel Embiid, and again, I'm drawing some conclusions. I don't know him, but, like, he's a guy that talks a lot about everything. I just alluded to how entertaining he is. Yeah. I think this is one topic that he probably should tighten up a little bit and just do it in the productive manner you just described, And so my message would be, from the team performance standpoint, let's put this in a box in a healthy manner, but it's running wild. And I think it is having a negative impact on his team. So,
yeah.